I think that is everybody in from the wait room right now, it looks like.
Sarah, did you want to lead out or do you want me to?
Sure, I
Maybe?
can.
Okay.
Yeah, so thanks everyone for joining the town hall meeting. We do have Tim Nickel here who is here to help moderate the meeting. So we do have a bunch of questions to get through tonight. So I think we'll go through everything, but we'll get through as much questions as we possibly can within the hour. So yeah, do you have anything to add there, Tim?
No, no, that sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. So we did send out a bit of an agenda beforehand. So the first thing on the agenda was just going to be, we did get a question about future best and just any updates that we have. And just the really quick answer there is that future best will be announced from SAS Sport more in February. I don't think they've announced the exact date that we should hear from everybody. But the future funding, best funding is a SAS Sport program, and we're kind of more the through agency. So as soon as they announce it, it will get out to everybody once we get the funding from them. And just so everyone knows, we did have 13 athletes that applied for future best funding this year. So that was nice to see. And then I think we were going to move on to things more like the board updates. So we can start maybe, there's been lots of talks here about just communication within the board and everything like that. So we did have a question in here about, is there a board member role specific to communication, and can the SWA start sending out updates by email and social media? And I think it was going to be Jason who was answering this, right? Am I looking at everything? Or was it Melissa?
I think Jason. Hey,
Okay,
you
I'm
okay
like,
with that, Jason?
my writing is really tiny and I apparently.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Thanks everyone for taking some time to spend with us tonight. As you know, these town halls are held quarterly, and it's one of the ways that the board is able to express, what's going on. Hold on, my kid's being really loud. So one of the ways that the board is able to just give updates on everything that's going on, all the exciting things that are coming up, any challenges that we're working through, and that in a way to get feedback. So they've been fairly well attended. So again, thank you for everyone that's attending tonight for taking time out. The website itself, so we're looking at updating the website. We've put out an expression of interest to have someone come in and update that, because right now it's not intuitive to have the website updated in a way that it's easily accessible to everybody. The other thing that we acknowledge is that social media is not accessible to everyone. As we've seen TikTok itself get shut down this week, that the same thing can happen to Instagram and Facebook. And so we need to be more consistent with email communication out to the membership, then to the broader membership and to the training centers themselves. And then we're looking for feedback. So how do you as the membership want to get communication? Where are you going to see it the most, and what is the most effective for you? So we're open to feedback on what would work best for everybody. And we'll look at implementing that as soon as possible. So it's something I know the website and a newsletter has been something that's been on the agenda for like as long as I've been on the board. It's been something that we've been wanting to do. It hasn't been something that we've been able to make the meaningful time to do that. So is there any questions about that?
Yeah, it's Cassandra. I'm just curious as to why
Oh, we lost you, Cassandra.
Sorry,
Cassandra, I think, oh yeah, you muted.
yes, why can't emails be sent? Well, obviously tonight they weren't sent. I was registered and I had to get my link from somewhere else, but I'm just curious as to why emails they suddenly stopped. We were getting emails fairly consistently for the longest time, and then all communication has stopped.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cassandra. So that's not intentional. The newsletters themselves, like I see, thank you, Francis. So Francis in the chat has noted that Lucas used to send out a monthly newsletter, and it was well received, and thankful for all that information that went out. The Lucas left to go become a doctor and take on that exciting career, and so that left that responsibility vacant. And we also had an executive director change twice. And so it takes a lot of effort, and that's something that we recognize we need to get back to doing regularly.
This should be like just emails regarding anything. How many board members left within a very, very short amount of time? I'm assuming that this nice lady talking at the beginning of the meeting was the new executive director. That would have been some important information to have. Like an email just saying, hi, this is what's going on. Communication, it's been lacking with this association for quite a while now, and it's very disappointing.
Thanks, Cassandra. Okay, if there's anything else, put it in the chat. If not, I'll pass it back to Sarah.
So the next question is, how does the board assess its performance over the past 2 years? What areas do they see as needing improvement, and what steps have they taken to address these issues? And that's back to you, Melissa.
Oh yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, this is a really good question. So, how do you assess your own performance doing a 360 review? And I can only speak to my own experience. I'm not going to speak for anybody else on the board, so they can hop in after and certainly put in their 2 cents. But I was voted onto the board in the end of 2022. So this is my 3rd and final season for this position. Right off the bat, right when we started that term, there was known that there was lots of things to work through. So it was known that we needed to update the website. There was already a list of committees that were not filled. So it was already known that we had a big gap in that area, and that the board was very much as a working board. And we still are. So there was a lot of discussion around that time about how do we get from a working board to a board that can pass off some responsibility to committees, for those committees to work, come up with recommendations, and bring that back to the board. And that's one thing I would say that I think that we need to get back to. We've taken a look at those committee lists and where those big gaps are, and where we can reach out to the membership for their expertise and really free up time for the board to do board things and lean on input from the membership and get that engagement going again. So, I know there's a lot of tension and a lot of challenges that we're working through, and at the same time, in the last 2 years, some really exciting things have happened. So it was Lucas's dream to have this 2-day meet, and he wasn't he had to go start his career before we were able to pull that off, but we did in the fall of 23. We pulled off that first two-day meet. We had incredible participation. We saw meets with folks from Manitoba and Alberta come and participate. We had some really exceptional performances nationally and internationally. There's just been a lot of great things, and a successful bid to host junior nationals this year. So despite challenges, there is a lot of amazing things. I just want to commend everybody here for being a part of that, and extend a round of applause for all the efforts that everybody's putting in so far. So that's where I'm sitting for, have things gone well, well enough for a board that has been, putting in a lot of time to work through challenges. we've had a lot of just delays in not being able to get things up and running as we work through some stuff. And I think this year the focus really is on in getting back to seeing, you know, reaching some successful goals. And so, you know, that's where I'm sitting as a board member that's been on for 2 years. I'd like to see, I wish we would have been able to get a little bit further than we have, but I'm also really happy and really proud of everybody in this association.
I'd like to step in. Thanks, Melissa. I just to actually sort of establish what my point of me being here is. Now somebody had just had their hand up. Don't let that go if you still want to say something. But I wanted to just outline some of the kind of some guidelines for the evening, and also there's a couple of and I think I can probably take some responsibility to communicate questions that are in the chat. Sometimes when you're speaking, it's hard to like you know, follow the chat and speak sometimes. So and Melissa or anybody from the board can respond to some of those questions. But I'm just going to post in the chat there's some guidelines about how we respond, and I think that only Cassandra has spoken. So, and this isn't a response to you, Cassandra. It was you were just fine. But when you're making points or asking questions, remember to describe actual event, like the impacts of actual events or actions, rather than making assumptions of intention. So that's just a really important thing. Describe behaviors, not character. And ask questions to understand, not to cross-examine or to make a point. So it's okay to make a point. That's perfectly fine. But to not try to hook it out of somebody, that kind of thing. Now, I understand that there was a question, something about committees. Are there committees left? And I'm not sure exactly how that makes sense or doesn't. To that, but it was I was a committee head and had no communication with the board. Are there committees left? Does somebody from the board want to respond to that?
I can, Tim. So we currently have an officials committee, which Kathy is heading, as well as a junior nationals committee that are functioning. Right now, one of our first orders of business as a board that we are wanting to get to is our normal course of governance is getting committees up and running so that we can start to move forward some of the initiatives to build the sport. Now, currently we've been a little distracted with some things, but we're hopeful that we can get back to our core mandate of growing and delivering on our strategic plan. So right now, what we're doing internally is we're looking at different models and building out terms of reference for each committee that we have. And then we'll be putting a call out to the membership for volunteers for committee members and committee heads again.
Okay. Were the other committees dissolved? Like what happened to the old committees?
What happened with the old committees is the head of the Masters Committee resigned. One of the heads of the Officials Committee resigned, and the head of the Adapted Committee resigned. Now Melissa is in her spare time with everything she's got going on has tried to get the Underrepresented Peoples Committee up and running. However, we've had a very busy year as a board dealing with a myriad of issues that have come up in front of us. So this is why we're very thankful that Janice, Jason, and Miranda have joined us. Not that we're going to work them to death, but we've got full bench strength on the board so all of us can work together to get committees going in the association to start moving.
Sure.
I can speak to that, just the rest of that committee part. So actually we had talked about the underrepresented committee work, and a lot of that had to do with winter games and getting into regions that we struggled to get into. Because I have family in the north, I'm from the north, it's like that's something I'm familiar with, the challenges there, but we also saw that there's a lot of challenges in the southeast and southwest of the province. So that committee we didn't get anywhere. We haven't started anything yet. That's something that's a priority. The other thing was there was a committee for loading and like basically the meat, like a meat committee. And it was just Dawn and Randy. Like those are the only two that expressed interest in going to the SWA office and loading up that entire trailer and taking it to events and unloading the trailer. And it was really hard to get folks on board with that, just the amount of work. So, and then the committees, if I recall there was a long list. It was like a clothing committee. There was stuff like that that was always in place but not filled. And it just, didn't take priority to the other work that was being done. So we're reviewing, what committees make sense right now, what is actually valuable to get the work done, and how do we recruit for that. So that's if you have any interest in that, please, send Sarah an email.
Okay. iPhone 4, who is that, by the way? iPhone 4, you're muted still. Could you write in the chat who you are?
She says it's Claire.
Oh, it's Claire. Okay. I'll change you. Okay. So a challenge to reestablish the former committee structure. Okay. And sorry about your sound, Claire. Feel free to work through the chat if you can.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. My earpods were in. They don't work for microphone. Yeah, no, I was just saying that, there's always going to be other issues at hand. I mean, I was on the board for 10 years and we had a lot of things come up in that time. But I think that when priorities shift so drastically that boards are, or sorry, not boards, committees are no longer functional and finding replacements aren't a priority and things are being dissolved without communicating these changes to the membership, that's when kind of pitfalls start to happen and the association actually takes a hit from the inactivity on certain things. So I think that would be something to maybe reprioritize. Committees are really important. Finding volunteers for the committees when people leave is also very important. And yeah, just communicating those changes would really benefit, and also actively engage the membership for other people that may want to step up and be part of those committees.
So one of the things about that, Claire, just to feedback a little bit of it that caught my attention, is almost like a self-increasing thing. Once your committees start to dissolve and they break down, then there's a difficulty getting them back up again. So it takes a real reestablishment of the effort. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. You need to, look at it again and prioritize again.
Sure. Good. Okay. Are we ready to move on, or does anybody else have a question or a point to make on this bit of performance? And we've switched to committees as well.
Yeah, I would just, is there still a master's committee? I never resigned from it. I know Jill stepped down as the head. So does that just make the committee null and void? There was several of us on there. It just sort of disappeared. Is that now stating that there is no more master's committee?
So what's the plan for the committee structure? Does it include a master's committee?
Yeah, I'll talk to that if you want. Yeah, thanks, Cassandra. I think likely what happened was when Jill stepped down, there was just a lack of communication and there was just an inactivity. There is a master's committee and it's on our agenda to get that up and running as soon as possible. We know that there's been a lack of communication, and that really is our number one priority, is to make sure that we get these things running and get that communication back to you guys so that we can be effective and so that all of our committees are effective. So, yes, there is a master's committee, but I think likely what happened was it just sort of fell by the wayside with nobody actually heading the committee. and with lots of changes on the board. So that is something that's going to keep moving forward. So please, if you're interested in staying on the Masters Committee, we'll be in touch and we'll start making plans. We know we've got Masters Nationals coming up in June and that kind of thing.
Jason asks, what's the mandate of the Masters Committee?
Well, at the time, it was mainly to keep the masters informed of the different competitions and qualifying that they can do to that, because the masters community was growing so much. People were interested in competing outside of the province, nationally and internationally, which we've done, and also thanks to Frances, who's earned she is a world record holder. So this is also a massive year for Masters because Worlds is in Vegas this year. There's a lot of people interested. And there's a lot of people who reach out to myself personally, to other Masters, that Jill, even though she's not head anymore, as to what information can be provided to Masters. It's one of the few ways they get it.
So informing and coordinating would be the functions that that committee takes on. Jason? Is that a hand up there?
Yeah, just a quick question, Cassandra. So Canadian Masters Weightlifting have always had a representative from each province as their liaison for that association. Do you know who the liaison is for Saskatchewan?
Still is Jill.
So Jill's mandate from Canadian Masters Weightlifting then would be to liaison with the Saskatchewan Weightlifting Association and be the person that we connect with for Masters Weightlifting. Is that not correct?
Not Jill, you'd have to speak to that one.
Because ultimately the Canadian Masters Weightlifting Association does all the promotion, all the registration. If you want to register for all those competitions internationally, it's all through the Canadian Masters Weightlifting Association. And then in order to grow it provincially, they ask for someone from each province to be that liaison. Now, I know that I used to do it a long time ago, like 10 years ago, and then Jill got on and they were super excited because they had two, but I've since stepped down about 8 years ago and Jill was a representative. Jill, are you still that representative?
I am. When I resigned as head of the committee, I had let them know and they asked me to stay on, so I am. But I have had, I am, yes. I still am. So, I would still like to be at this point.
Yeah, and that's awesome. All I'm asking is that, so my question, just to make things effective, and because we're such a small group of people ultimately, do we need a committee or do we just need to liaison with you? Do we need a committee of people or do we just need Jill to communicate with the SWA when there's stuff happening on the master side that we can then promote and execute more on our side?
I guess that's a question for you guys. I will do that. But that is all I'm willing to do at this point.
Lucas has a point about the purpose of what actually happened. He said we used to chat at least every month or two with the Masters Committee and had them come to speak with the board a couple of times to plan Masters group. Basically representation and a path to better serve the group. Worked well before to have them.
Yeah, so Jill, if you want to provide us with any information coming on from the Masters side, since you're well plugged into that world, that's awesome. Just share with us as much as you want. And if ultimately you feel the need that we need a committee, we can build a committee around it. But if we need to liaison just with you, that's very simple and very effective as well. Just because we've had committees in the past doesn't mean that a committee is the best path forward for all the things.
Okay, so I stepped down as the head of the Masters Committee because I could not get any communication from the board. So that's why I stepped down. I don't feel like at this stage anybody has been listening to me. Why would I continue that?
Well, that's a terrific question, Jill. But ultimately, you're looking at what 60% of the board is brand new. Right, so 3 out of 5 of us are brand new. So as one of the newest members of the board, I would love nothing but to get emails from you and asking for, and you telling us about what's happening in the world of Masters, and then we'll promote it as widely as possible. I'm a Masters myself, and I'm thinking of giving another crack at it. The best I did was second at Worlds. I'd love to maybe go down to Vegas and go down again. So if you could keep us abreast of all the information, we would gladly, bring it on.
Yeah, okay. I will, you're right, because there are new board members. I will give you guys the benefit of the doubt and I will communicate. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jill. Appreciate that. Sorry, and my math was wrong. I said 3 out of 5 members are new, but it's 3 out of 6 because we just added Janice not that long ago. So 50-50.
So talking about committee structure, that sort of thing, I guess to use our time wisely tonight, we've heard some various opinions, mostly about the Masters Committee. Are there any more points that we want to make? Ultimately, I'm guessing that the board is going to take this information and then do the work of creating a board structure, eliciting chairs, finding volunteers for chairs, that sort of thing, and creating terms of reference if they aren't already available. Sure, Jason.
I saw in the chat, Claire had a question about coaches committee. Claire, do you want to expand a little bit on what the question is, or because we currently do not have a coaches committee, but do you want to just expand on your vision of that and its mandate? And because we've had one in the past, but I was never part of it except for a few months my entire career, and I've been a pretty important part of coaching here in Saskatchewan for a long time.
Oh, I'm just stating that it's being reinforced. The dissolution of all of these committees is just, I'm just reinforcing that, like, there's no communication, like the coaches committee, the Masters Committee, no one knows what's happening with most committees, who sits on them, what they do, that type of thing. So it was just kind of an addition to the conversation that we were having on committees.
So it would be appreciated to have communication about whatever developments on the committee front, particularly on the conclusions of that.
Perfect. Thanks, Claire.
Kathy?
Yes, I'm one of the co-chairs of the officials committee. I do want to say yes, that on our side too, it's been difficult to get any sort of communication from the board. Like lots of times we'll kind of put towards policies, and it's not until a couple follow-ups until I get an actual response. So if in the past, having the chairs or members of the committee sitting on meetings, I would be more than happy to do that. So just kind of wanted to put that out there as well. Yeah, as an officials committee, we don't really meet that often, kind of around competitions, and even then it's sometimes just emails, but yeah, more streamlined communication with the board would be very appreciated.
Chris?
Thank you for that, Kathy and Claire. Your comments are well heard. Same with yours, Cassandra and Jill. So this is just like a very high level idea, but one of the ideas that might happen is in our bylaws, and then it allows for the president or a delegate of the presidents to be a member ex officio of each committee. And so one of the ideas that we are exploring, we're not committed to implementing this until we figure it out, and maybe some feedback from you guys, the members, would be helpful for this, is that if each member of the board had a portfolio, and so like Kathy, if that was Emma as an example, and her portfolio was to be a member, an ex officio member of the officials committee, and then she becomes your conduit from the officials committee to the board and vice versa. That's the kind of idea that is there to help provide clear lines of communication between the committees and the boards to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, and that there's an efficient way to have that. And then that way it also is, you know, our committees are empty right now, not dissolved. And so when we start to get vacancies, then that can get reported up to the board and we can start recruiting replacements as well. And so that's an idea that is out there right now. And like really, we've been a board for 6 weeks pretty much as our current form. And so we're trying to get this put in place and make sure that we can improve the communication, because we've heard very clearly that that needs to be done.
Claire?
Yeah, just a comment for your high level idea. The responsibility of the board is to be on the board, and the responsibility of the committee is actually to take away engagement from the board, because they don't have time to do everything, and they need committees to help engage different communities and to take on that responsibility and liaise with the board. So having board members each have a portfolio and having to sit on a committee would add additional responsibility to a board that doesn't seem able to take care of the mandate they currently have.
Thank you for your feedback. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay. I'm thinking that like what we're doing here is going through these questions that were addressed to the board. I think, is there a next question that we need to get to now?
Yeah, we can move on to junior nationals now. So I don't know, Sydney, do you want to answer this one? Or I know I got the answer from it, but.
I'm happy to answer.
Okay, so is it possible to get a monthly update on how planning for junior nationals is going?
Yes, so I am happy. So hi everyone, I'm Sydney. I'm the chair of the Junior Nationals Organizing Committee. And yes, I just want to say that we are happy to share our progress. But what I would like to hear is sort of how you would like to hear that information. Like, do you want blog posts? Do you like what emails out to membership? Like, I would just like to know sort of what would be the most beneficial way to get that information. If anybody wants to chime in. Sorry.
One vote for email. Actually on this one, let's just list a few of the different ways, and then have everybody just at once just put in their preference. So email, social media, emails looking like.
Okay, I will happily draft monthly emails, and I will have the board send them out to whoever's sending out the emails, and I'll just make sure that they get sent out, but I'm happy to do that.
Okay, and there's a vote for newsletter in there as well. We think there's probably, sounds like the board is considering an overall sort of review of their communication plans, which would include the possibility of a newsletter. So, okay.
Does anybody else have another question on junior nationals, or maybe in the interest of time, we might move on to coaches and officials updates? Okay.
I just want to make one quick comment about junior nationals. I just want to say that if you have any questions or concerns or anything, like, please feel free to reach out to myself personally. My email is up on the junior national page on the SWA website. I just want to let everybody know that you're welcome to ask questions, anything like that. So just, the door's open. Thanks.
Oh, maybe this one we should actually answer. So how will the new weight classes affect eligibility for events like nationals and international competitions?
I think Jason's got a comment.
Yeah, so we've been in conversation with Weightlifting Canada. So preliminary right now, the new weight classes will be in effect for junior nationals. We don't know yet for senior nationals, but they're also making some concessions that if you've already qualified in the current weight classes for senior nationals or junior nationals, you'll be good to go and you'll just declare your weight class. Those details haven't been formalized and haven't been released by Mac Reed or Craig Walker at Canadian Weightlifting yet. So we're waiting on the final details, but we already know that, like, for example, Dryden and Bryn that are competing at Pan Ams in Cuba, in a month and a half, they'll be competing in the new weight classes. So there's expectation that potentially senior nationals will be new weight classes, and junior nationals are definitely the new weight classes. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we're just waiting for more direction directly from Weightlifting Canada.
Yeah.
Jill, for masters, for masters, can you remind me, masters nationals, Jill, they're in Calgary? What's the date of them? Are they in June?
Yeah, June 28th.
Yeah, so that'll be a question. Like, so Jill, actually, if you could send a quick question directly to Weightlifting Masters, but they generally follow suit with like the IWF standards. So I'm assuming
It is the new weight classes already. Pan Ams, Nationals, and Worlds. New weight classes.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, and Jill, they've already put out their new standards, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, the qualification information is already up there. So
masters are faster than Canadian Weightlifting Canada.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, you got one guy, Mark, right, doing all of it. So it's nice. One person.
Awesome. Yeah. And sometimes that's the best way to go. Awesome. Is that close? We can move on to the next question then, Sarah.
Okay. So maybe then I'm going to move on to the coaches and officials updates. So one question that we have here is, why are coaches charged to coach? If an athlete is also a coach, why charge the additional fee? And if this has changed, please advise.
Who's taking that one?
So
I can take that one. So when we brought in the $10 registration fee, what that was for is for the administration that happens behind the scenes. And that includes verifying criminal record checks, making sure making sure coaches are qualified, and then preparing things for the meet, such as their credentials, etc. And so there is a cost to the association for coaches at meets. Now, we haven't included that in the 306 Open this time around, but if we need to, what may end up happening is we just start including those in the athlete registration fees. And then instead of a $10 charge, it might be an extra $1 or an extra 50 cents on each athlete. But it's to cover the administration costs to ensure that we're adhering to our safe sport guidelines.
So Chris, you're saying that there is some thought or some discussion already happening about the possibility of changing that?
Yeah, there is. And like, we recognize there's some issues. Like, if somebody is a coach and an official, that process of being, the criminal record check, that you do it once, it's the same for each, right? It's just a matter of, every coach has to have a vulnerable sector check just the same as any official doing a weigh-in.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize there's some work to be done there. But there is a cost to the association for people attending events.
Okay. And a point made by Lucas in the chat as well. Any comments or questions about that?
So the next question we have is, the officials training seems to always be held on Sundays at noon, the weekend before the competition. Is it possible to schedule the officials training on varying times and days throughout the year? So if someone that isn't available on Sundays would be able to make the officials training? And I think we have Emma answering that one.
Yeah, I think this is really good feedback from membership, and I think they'll pass that on to the officials committee to work on. I don't see why that. I mean, Kathy probably could speak better to that, but I'm sure that we can find a way to have some flexibility there to make sure more people can do the training.
Yeah, I'll just make note of that. And Yeah, I think mostly we did it on Sundays at noon the week before the competition, just so that it's fresh in those people's minds when they're shadowing. But if Sunday is not a great day, we're definitely more than open to other days of the week. So yeah, reach out to just officials at saskweightlifting.com, and we can definitely collaborate on other days.
Kathy, could you put that email into the chat? Nice. Okay, Sarah, another question?
So I'll maybe move on to meets now. So meets updates. So if growing the association is a goal, is it possible to lower the barrier to entry for first-time lifters? Is it possible to waive the competition fee for first-time lifters? And we have Melissa coming back to answer that one.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things that we've been talking about for a long time. A couple years ago, the discussion about how to lower the barrier to entry was actually around singlets. And, you know, there was folks that felt they didn't want to invest too much into the official costume of the sport until they knew they really wanted to do it. And, you know, there's just a lot of discussion about that. At the time, that was the focus. And so we came up with some, you know, some ideas around that, but we're open to anything. I mean, that's the whole point, right? We want to see people try the sport out and grow it. And what does that mean at a local level? And then what does that mean, you know, as lifters get more comfortable and are competing at a higher level? So nothing's off the table. We're open to any ideas. Go ahead, Jason. See your hand up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but for the meet that was held in November at Kilos Talk, did we not waive the membership requirement to compete?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you had to pay the fee to compete, but you didn't have to pay for a membership.
No, they paid for a membership. They didn't pay for the meet.
Okay, yeah,
right?
one or the other, right?
Yeah.
So there are already things in place that to try and, you know, remove those barriers so people can get a taste of their first competition and hopefully get hooked.
Yeah. There's nothing, I don't know if anyone's following Saskatoon Triathlon Club. They're trying something. I don't know if they do it every year, but for the month of January, they have actually a reduced membership fee, and then it's associated with a challenge for the month of January with prizes. And it's really effective for the Saskatoon Triathlon Club because that's how they get people, you know, they already have a membership, so they might try an event later on in the year. It's something to think about. So there's lots of ideas out there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, but if you've got them, we'll take those ideas.
Melissa, how would a member offer their idea? What would be the ways that they could do that?
That's a good question. I think right now to send an email to Sarah, the executive director email as they come, and then, you know, reach out to your training center. And if you've got a bunch of suggestions, to go to Sarah as a bulk email.
Okay. Other comments or questions about that topic, about accessibility and promoting the sport? All right, Sarah, you want to head to another question?
So as there's only about 14 minutes left, we'll maybe move on to the training center discussion now. So the first question that we have is what are the events that led to Synergy being removed as a training center in good standing? How has the SWA worked with Synergy to try and reconcile their TC status? And I think Chris was going to answer that one.
Thanks, Sarah. So this has been an ongoing issue at least since March last year, so March 2023. And so what it was is that the board had received complaints that there were clubs that felt that there was an uneven distribution of work being done to set up and take down weightlifting events that were ongoing throughout the season. And so at that point in time, Tanner had a meeting with Chad, who is the head of the training center. And at that time, it talked about the lack of volunteering at events and the lack of officials from the registered training center. And so in that, Tanner had approached and expressed that the board and the SWA would like to see greater involvement so that nothing has to happen with training center status. Now, in that meeting as well, it was also acknowledged that Synergy had not met the officials requirement for a training center of their size in the 2022-2023 season. And so at that point in time of that meeting in the 2023-2024 season, Synergy also was not on track to meet their officiating requirements. And so there's 2 meets left in the year, and an officials training course came on. There was people associated with Synergy that were there and that started participating. But at the end of the season last year, they hadn't met the officials requirement. So then moving on from the last meet in April of last year, the board was preparing for senior and junior nationals. And then I will admit we got a little quiet during July, quieter than we were with our current lack of communication. And in August, we regrouped, and then we sent out a letter letting Synergy Strength know that they hadn't met the requirements to remain a training center in good standing, and what the implications were of that, and what they could do to rectify the situation, which was to have greater volunteer participation, and as well as to make sure they have 5 certified officials for their training center of that size. With that, there were more members from Synergy involved at Chalk and Awe, both on the officiating side and the volunteer side. However, they still hadn't come up to the required level of officials that we need. Their members did a fantastic job of helping set up, tear down for the meet, as well as to load plates. They had a member actually who I think loaded almost every session that day, back to back to back, which is friggin' phenomenal if anybody's ever loaded a bar, which most of us have. And so the events that led to that is that we saw that as a positive sign from the board, but then come our last meet, which was the youth junior meet at the end of October, or pardon me, end of November, there was no participation from Synergy in that meet, and they had planned an internal meet at their own gym outside for that to happen. Now, what has led to this is that in this time, the board has reached out, letting them know what their status was and what they could do to rectify it. And from our perspective, we feel that we provided the information on what needed to be done to remain a training center in good standing, and that wasn't followed through on. And so that's how they lost their training center status. The other part of that is that we reached out a number of times to do this, and rather than, there was a conversation had about volunteer hours, and where the Synergy members came to us and said, what do we need to do, and worked with us to achieve those things. And at other points in time, it was arguing over the specifics. And really what happened is that in that arguing, rather than getting down to business, we felt that it was put off. And we were so hopeful after Chalk and Awe that things were going to be righted. And then at the youth junior meet, to see no participation from the training center was very disappointing for us to see. And so in order to be fair to all of the other training centers in the province and in the association who have met the requirements to remain training centers in good standing, even when they were warned about it last year, we have to follow the policies as they're written. And so they didn't meet the officiating requirement, and therefore they're no longer a training center in good standing. So that's the events that happened. And the board communicated the requirements. Tanner did in person. There was an email sent out by our former executive director letting all training centers know what their requirements were. There's a training center meeting in November or October, November of 2023, where those requirements were outlined to all training centers. There was a training center meeting in 2024 where those requirements were also outlined as well. And on top of this, the training center policy when it comes to officials and what the officials must do hasn't changed since 2020. So, you know, we've worked pretty hard to make sure that the requirements were understood and that they were met. And unfortunately, for a training center in good standing, in order to be fair to the rest of the association, unfortunately, we had to enforce the policy.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Claire's got her hand raised, and Lucas has a question in the chat that we should probably. But Claire, you were first, so could you speak to your question or comment?
Yeah, we understand that we were definitely short in officiating hours, and we know where we've read the policies. We know what the hours were and what we needed. So that's not a question. We know where to find that information. We have that information. Chris is absolutely correct. We received that information. However, Autism Services was a part of the Saskatchewan Weightlifting Association Board of Directors initiative for reaching out to different communities. And we had a really great autism services program through the Saskatchewan Weightlifting Association. It was not a privately led synergy program. And we had about 300 hours of volunteerism and tens of hours, many hours of coaching and officiating for the autism services meet. Now, we were under the impression that those counted as well because it was an SWA initiative and not a synergy initiative. SWA started that initiative. So when we found out that actually those 300 hours for the year weren't going to count, that's when we figured we were in trouble. And so just, first of all, there was about 36 to 50 fully paid up members of Autism Services that have now left. And actually, it was kind of applauded within the board of directors when the Autism Services left to powerlifting. So we lost 50 members, paying members. They paid for meets. And I just find that the fact that those volunteer hours didn't count is why this is contentious, and not because we didn't meet. I understand that we have to meet our hours just like everyone else. And we tried to respect as much as possible, but it was really baffling when 300 plus hours of volunteerism wasn't counted for paying members. So I think that's where this all kind of went awry, if you will. Also, we had people, so also they didn't log hours since 2022 and 2023. They've never logged those hours. I've asked for the logs of clubs' hours. I've asked to see what clubs have equipment, how many hours they've had volunteering. We never used to log those. The first year was this year where I actually saw a physical logbook. There was no financial compensation for the Autism Services got money from SWA to run a couple things, but not really. It was all run just as a volunteer program. And the financial compensation actually went to the SWA through membership. 50 members is huge. Plus, they did 2 meets a year approximately. It was a really good way to make money for the association and a good way to be involved in different communities. So that is no longer with the SWA. So I think that's where the contention comes in. Also, we had a member who wasn't a member of the Saskatchewan Weightlifting Association. So his volunteer hours, he did the course and then he shadowed and then he did hours. And so we thought we were actually okay. And then we found out that at the end of the year that, they weren't a member, so their hours don't count. And then also we had people that signed up as officials. I want to get more officials involved. I think it's really great to have people involved. Shadowing hours also weren't counted for us. So we did fall short, which is super unfortunate. But we thought we had completed it. We know where to find the information. So it's not a lack of information on our part. It's actually a lack of clarity and transparency from the board on what actually counts and what does not count. And if they're applying this to all the same clubs the same level.
So Claire, it's a lot there, right? But you're painting a picture that was more complicated from Synergy's point of view, that it, like and although there were a few things that that kind of tipped it and in your and made it so that you didn't have as much volunteer hours logged, for instance, even just logging them, period. But the big one was the autism services, that there was a lot of work that Synergy did to bring them in, and they did a lot of work. It was the understanding of Synergy at the time that that was going to be part of their volunteer commitments. Is that what I'm getting from you, Claire? And just conspicuous to me, although I mean I'm just coming from the outside. It sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of mutual communication during that period of time to clarify what the standing actually was. And I mean, although what I'm hearing from Chris is that it was occurring over a couple, well, now almost 3 years.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, we maybe shouldn't have assumed that an SWA led initiative would count as volunteerism. That was a very silly assumption. We'll never do that going forward. And also that shadowing hours didn't count, and also that if you weren't a member, those hours all of a sudden didn't count. So it was a failure on both parts, definitely, because we had thought that we were actually doing our part. And yeah, we should have clarified hindsight.
Okay, Melissa, you were going to say something, and also I don't want to lose Lucas.
Yeah, no, just and I see Cassandra pop something in the chat about it too. So it is my understanding that the autism program was brought to the SWA to run through it because it could not be run through a for-profit business, which Synergy is. So it had to be flowed through the SWA. So the SWA as an association was merely the conduit of the funds, so that program could run to Synergy. For those that were around at the time, do you recall, was an RFP ever put out to offer that to the other clubs to run that program? Okay, so there's someone in the chat that's saying no. So I just wanted to clarify, Claire, that you're saying that the coaches were not paid. It's my understanding they were paid, and there was some honorariums paid to minors. So your minor coaches. Maybe could you actually just clarify a little bit about your comment in there? So it's an SWA initiative, but they are simply not a conduit.
Yeah, like, it was an SWA led initiative. So, and it was to gain outreach to other communities. Anything that was paid to coaches, sorry, I don't have all the information. It was paid through grants and things like that. So it wasn't like a money, you know what, it's not, it wasn't like a money maker. It was a purely community driven initiative, and the SWA was the lead initiator, as Synergy was the conduit to have that.
And was Synergy being paid rent?
Our financial records show that facility rental fees were paid and that coaches at Synergy were paid. There's also a financial proposal from Synergy of the coaches they would provide in their rate. So as Lucas has said in the chat, that the program was organized by Chad and Kelly. It was put through the SWA because Synergy Strength cannot apply for the Autism Services Grant program that they were in as a for-profit business. The SWA, on the other hand, as a nonprofit association, can.
So just
okay. Well, so beyond that, let's say that's all true. I have no idea what the details are. So yeah, sure, true. We still lost 50 members through Autism Services, just because you just didn't want them anymore, and there was over 300 hours volunteer.
No, sorry, Claire, that's not true.
That's not true. Please.
Can I just weigh in on a little bit of process about and actually mainly on the point of why we're talking like this, because this is a really rich conversation coming from the outside. I don't have the background of any of this stuff. but what I do know, because I've been in thousands of other conversations like this, where there's complexity, lots of water under the bridge, different interests, private and nonprofit interests at play, both of which are legitimate and fair, and a lot of people involved, enough people to have lots of different perspectives on things, is that a conversation like this, it's really important to remember to keep it, the point of it, to understand, not to try to convince each other of one particular truth or not, because my guess is that there's a lot of different perspectives and they all have some validity. Just some interesting things about, a large group of people that, maybe there were opportunities all around, that maybe some were missed and some were taken. In any case, just reminding you to speak to be understood and listen to understand. Yeah, and I don't think misspoken so much, Claire, as I think all of you, there's probably a lot to learn from this circumstance, and I don't know procedurally, don't know where things are at. I'm curious where things are at now, but yeah, I'm curious what's going on with the autism group now.
The autism group is still with Synergy.
Mhm.
And has something prevented them from being members of the SWA? Because I know as a board, we would love to have them. There's never been any discussion around not wanting them to be a part of the association.
Well, I know a lot of the parents were quite discouraged by how they were treated by the association. There was not a lot of promotion besides what Kelly did, and also the fact that the one time that they were doing a virtual meet and the association felt it was worthwhile to turn off their session on the live feed to catch up at a meet. Again, showing that they were just not important. So
really sorry to hear that.
They decided that time to move on. But yeah, all the members are still training. They're still doing fantastic. And that is why part of our in-house meet, which Synergy planned after the association came out with their schedule. The November meet was originally scheduled for the same weekend as Westerns. That is why we planned our meet for November 30th. And that was also where the Autism Services group got to show what they do. So yeah, you guys did not have a great meet. We had 65 people.
Chris, you were going to say something?
I'm unfamiliar, Cassandra, with the video feed being turned off, and I believe you. Is it okay if I touch base with you to get some more specifics about that? Because I don't want that to ever happen again. And we need to understand when, how, and why it happened to prevent it from.
Well, I've already talked to my former co-chair, Kathy Lee, about that and how disappointed I was with that. I expressed it to Tanner Treen, I expressed it to Angela, and I expressed it to the board itself. So yeah, that was part of the reason why I stepped down, was just how I felt members of my own club, 50 of them, were so completely disrespected by this association. So yeah. And with that much disrespect shown to our club, on top of many other things that are happening, why on earth would Synergy want to help with this association?
Just remembering.
Synergy helped for years and years.
Yeah. So what you're saying, Cassandra, is Synergy wants to be valued and acknowledged for the contributions that they've done. And the intentions of the board, I'm guessing, are varied. And also there's a lot of turnover on the board. So what Chris is saying is, from your perspective, Chris, and I'm just going to feedback that you're hoping to learn again. If there was communication that was already communicated, wanting to learn again to prevent that seems to you to be a real problem that occurred.
Communication, dismissiveness, disrespect. Yep, it's huge.
So are there other questions surrounding this, the the topic of the training centers and the volunteer hours. And I guess where are we at now with it? What's the next step with it?
Chris, do you want to take that?
I guess, Tim, can you just repeat that again for me? Just to
Well, I'm wanting to, and again, not knowing what's going on here. What are the implications of this, and what are the next steps? From the board's point of view, is there more learning to do? Where are we at with decisions? Those sorts of things.
Yeah, that's a really good follow-up question and summary question, Tim, is I think from what I see here tonight is what I've heard is number one is we need to improve our communication with the members. And then number two is we need to start getting the functional parts of the association moving again and make changes where we need to, as we've already talked about, is like, you know, we're looking at different ways of doing business to make us more efficient and make it also more useful to the members. And so that's the first thing I'll say right off the start that, you know, we need to do, but there's some definite feedback here that we can take to heart. And I also hear, especially listening to some of the members from Synergy and, you know, on the masters discussion, hearing what Jill said is let's try to rebuild some relationships so that we can move forward together as a group. Now, having said that, in rebuilding relationships, we also need to make sure that the function of the association and the policies that we currently have in place are respected, and it's fair to all training centers and to all members. That's really like one of the biggest things that we can do. And so when it comes down to moving forward, we have to make sure that it's done fairly and equitably, and that everybody is considered at the table that we sit at, figuratively, if that makes sense.
There's some specific questions. How many hours? Now, and I'm wondering about forum for the particular decision. Is that maybe best done directly with Synergy or not? We can do it here too, possibly. But I don't want to overstep my role. There was a specific question though about equipment. Fear that that equipment would be taken away. Is there something that could be explained about that would address that issue?
Yes, I can address that issue. So in 2020, 2021, and the first part of 2022, the association provided equipment at a 50% discount to participating training centers, and that was sold to them under a contract with certain contract terms. Included in that contract term was the term length, which was 5 years, and that the training center was to provide the equipment to the SWA to facilitate major events such as junior nationals. So we don't have to buy more equipment every year if it's in their home city. Also, a clause in those contracts included that the training centers must remain a training center for the period of 5 years. And if they don't remain a training center, they're to return their equipment. So this is outside of the training center policy. There are specific equipment purchase contracts that we have with a number of training centers. And so, Francis, to your question is that the board doesn't want to take the equipment. However, there was no cooperation in terms of getting the required officials, et cetera. And so, unfortunately, it's a big challenge for us, because how do we remain fair with all of the other training centers who have these contracts and are honoring their agreement by remaining training centers in good standing and remaining training centers? It comes down to what's fair to everyone. And we've worked to try to not take equipment. And unfortunately, we had exhausted a lot of our other options. Now, thankfully, and I say this in like honestly, is thankfully with new eyes on the situation with our new board members, which I'm very happy to have on board, we have some other avenues. And so we've sent a letter to Chad asking to arrange a meeting so that we can come up with a path forward to make sure that equipment is available to the members of Synergy Strength for them to train and continue their weightlifting development. We understand that taking equipment out of facilities does not help weightlifters weightlift. We also understand that we need officials and volunteers for our meets and our events to run. And we can't burn out our clubs. That's part of the reason why the training center policy was brought in, from what I can tell in the records I have, is it was a way to incentivize and keep all training centers from contributing equitably across the association. And as we heard from Claire, like, you guys do recognize, and I'm happy to hear that yeah, you guys have fallen short in a lot of areas. And it's
Just
you know,
one
I saw
area.
the comment in the side there from Jill of like, how many hours is it? It worked out to 12 sessions in 2023, 2024. I haven't gone back to look at 22, 23. But what
There's
that
no
shows
log
to
of it
me
though.
is there's what
I'll
it
give you a
shows.
chance to speak, Claire.
What it shows to me is that there's a potential that the rules are different for different clubs, and that's not the way that we as a board are running the association. Everybody operates by the same rules.
So Claire, you had a few things to say. You want to clarify some of what was the implications from what Chris had said, I think. And then I just want to also keep track of the time here. It's 8:15, and I think that there was a goal to be done at 8. So, Claire, what were you going to say?
Oh, that's okay. I've taken up enough of your time.
Emma.
Can I just speak to one thing? I guess I just wanted to speak to like the heart behind a lot of this stuff, because as we've already mentioned, there is a lack of open communication. And in some ways it's difficult as a board member not to feel somewhat defensive of that, knowing how many things we've had to balance in the last few years and how many hours, many of the board members have put in. And you've seen a lot of turnover in the board, and a lot of that has been because of the deep commitment that it's taken and the cost on people's lives, personal lives and energy. But we love the sport and we love the association. And in every conversation that came up around this equipment, it always came down to like, how do we find a way to make sure that athletes have access to this equipment? There's no desire to take that away. And I think it's tricky because the SWA is not in a financial position or in the business of providing equipment at a 50% discount. We're not there to have a subsidized equipment program for gyms. And so there was a requirement around it, a 5-year commitment to follow through, and that was part of the transaction. And that has never really been disputed until now. And along the way, we gave a lot of extensions, hoping that compliance would happen. And so I think it's difficult. I honestly don't think any of us assumed we would get to a position where the equipment was actually at risk of being removed. And when that did happen, we were still searching for ways to make sure that didn't impact athletes. But there seems to be this perception that the board wants to impact athletes in a specific club. And I just know that from the inside, regardless of how that comes across, that really isn't the intention, that people really want to make sure that everyone can move forward. At the end, we're here because we love a sport. We want it to keep moving. There's no kind of like ulterior motive. I'm going to turn this off before my dogs bark a bunch, but I just wanted to make sure that that piece was put out there, that there is really like a care to make sure athletes have access. And there's some very creative ways of making that happen, kind of regardless of how this path plays out.
To speak to that, I do know that personally, I have talked with 2 other gym owners who they haven't done anything in the past year. They haven't competed, they haven't volunteered, they haven't officiated, but yet they have had no one reach out from the SWA to say, hey, you need to do this. Hey, we're going to come and get your equipment. I know a former member now, who has equipment in their garage. The SWA has never gone after them. So it's just curious as to why they've taken such a look at Chad in particular when the equipment has been purchased. But again, they can't show any contracts. They can't show anything. So this just seems like another hit.
So, I mean, you're bringing up new things, Cassandra, and hard to evaluate here with, other people's experiences that aren't here. Maybe they are, but I guess at this point, are there other questions of the board, knowing that obviously this conversation isn't over probably, but the point of this conversation today was to develop some understanding. There's a lot of information in the chat, opinions and their people's experiences of things and some facts, and all of it is valid. And I will be. I think that I'm currently host, so I will try very hard to make sure that that's preserved. And maybe if we can be co-host for a little bit, Sarah, we can make sure that that happens so I don't screw up. And then we'll just have maybe 2 or 3 more comments and then close the meeting. Tessa, thanks for joining in. There's a lot of people who haven't had a chance to speak, so that's good. What do you have to say?
Mine's just more of a general comment, and I'm fairly new to the Weightlifting Association, but I just wanted to thank the board for all the work that they're doing and labor that I imagine they're doing off the side of their desk as they have busy lives and jobs and families. So just wanted to express my gratitude for you as a board. And I think something that I'm taking away personally from this meeting is, as a member, is like how I can step up in ways to maybe ensure some of these other extra things can be, go into action. So I'm really looking forward to maybe volunteering some of my own time as we enter into this new year. That's all I got to say. Thanks, guys.
You're a brave person, Tessa, saying something like that at a meeting like this. You're probably already volunteered for something, you just don't know it yet. Any other comments? Maybe some people who haven't spoken yet. Janice.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to add to the discussion is, like, I'm relatively new, so I'm 4 to 6 weeks new on the board. And from our discussions, really what we want to do is start looking at finding a way to move forward. For a lot of us, the information is new, and there's a huge history there that we don't really know about. And our goal really is to figure out how to find a way forward, so that all of the Synergy lifters can continue to be a part of the SWA and be a part of the meets, and that we come back together as a community. Our goal as a board is to continue to be a big weightlifting community, because we all love it. And we all want to keep doing it. And so, yes, we can keep talking about the issues and the things that happened. But what we really want to start doing is looking forward and seeing how we can move through some of this stuff. How can we do things better? Are there different models that we can look at that provide a better basis for training centers and volunteer hours and TOing and all of this kind of stuff that actually works better for all of the training centers and for the association, and that just sort of propels us forward as a big community. And so know that as a board, that is our focus, is that yes, we know that there are issues and that there have been issues. We don't want to keep going over the same issues. We want to try and find some pathways forward. And so, for us, that's a big part of the work that we're doing this year, is really hoping to push weightlifting forward as a big community, and find a way to move through some of the stuff that's happened.
Right.
Can I say one last thing, Tim?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of questions we didn't get to tonight, and the board has them all. We have them in a spreadsheet. We've been putting information in, and we will be sharing those answers. It sounds like email is the best way to do that. But if you had questions tonight that didn't get answered, just know that they're still important, and you'll still get some clarity around those.
Okay. Sarah, are we set to finish the meeting then today? Oh, Jason, you would like to say something first?
Just 2 things. First, thanks to everyone for participating. But I think we need to take a step back collectively as an organization, and we have to stop thinking of the SWA as 6 board members. the SWA is all of us. Like every single person that weightlifts is part of the Saskatchewan Weightlifting Association. It's not the 6 of us that make up the SWA. So the constant like, oh, the SWA, no, it's all of us, and we're all trying. Like this is just a volunteer board, and I realize there's some history there, and there's a lot of hurt feelings, and there's a lot of concerns. But ultimately, we all have the goal in mind, and I know my goal ultimately is to make Quebec look over their shoulder and say Saskatchewan's coming, right? Like we've already passed, like at the junior level, we've passed Alberta, we've passed BC. We just won junior Westerns for our female side. Like we are strong and we're coming in strong. I want Quebec to be looking over their shoulder and say, oh, those Saskatchewan athletes are coming again. So let's be nervous. To that point, I've also put a proposal towards the board on a new way forward for come October 1st. So something that I'm going to discuss with all the clubs and the head of the clubs, because it'll be impact all those key stakeholders. And it's kind of a new path forward on meets and volunteering and the whole kind of gamut. And I'll do that by April. And then we will bring it forward to potentially the next town hall by the end of July and make ultimately the decision so that it can be implemented for October 1st if the greater association wants to go forward with my thoughts, which is also being mirrored by the AWA right now as well. So there's lots of things. So for all the synergy lifters, we love you, man. Like there is nothing, like I've always said, like the more competitive synergy gets, the more competitive my club gets, and the more we like, you know, they just announced 10 lifters going to Junior Pan Ams. Out of those 10, 2 are from Saskatoon. 20% of the lifters going to Junior Pan Ams are from Saskatoon. Like we're incredible right now. Let's keep the momentum going and let's keep moving forward.
Thanks, Jason. Nice way to end. All right.
Yeah,
Sarah?
we're almost half an hour behind schedule here, so the board will look at everyone's questions and we'll get like an email out to everyone with any of the questions that we didn't get to tonight. And I guess thanks everybody for joining us tonight.
And I can confirm that I have successfully saved the chat.
Yes, I have here too.
Except for 7 Sask athletes competed at Masters Pan Ams, 5 medals. Okay. Noted.
Okay, thank you guys very much.
All right. Cheers, everyone.